All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I will be running this meeting today, these office hours. So just wait a few more people to walk in. The format of today is also going to be a little bit different. Rather than having sort of assigned speakers, we're going to just open questions up to everyone in attendance. Anyone can respond to questions that they're comfortable responding to. The reason we decided to do this is because mental health can be a sensitive and sort of very personal topic, and so we just want to be respectful of that, but also make sure everyone can really feel included in the conversation. So yeah. And so yeah, I expect this to be very kind of loose and free form and more of an open discussion, because I know that yeah, mental health is really important to all of us. So maybe wait to see if a couple more people walk in, but otherwise I think we can get started. Okay, so quick introduction. I'm Marcella Millara. I'm one of the co-chairs of the BEAR working group, along with Jasenia and Jay, who are also here today. And this month's office hours, March 2025, we have decided to talk about the very important topic of mental health in the tech industry and cybersecurity. It's very near and dear to all of us. It's something that we've talked about in the past, and so we wanted to bring this discussion to the broader community. Okay. I don't know, Jasenia or Jay, if you want to say a quick word.
Yeah,
Hey everyone.
go ahead,
Go,
Jasenia.
Jay. Okay, I'll take over. Um, Today's just going to be like an open forum conversations. It's a really important topic, especially folks at work. I mean, just everyone needs to discuss their own mental health. And then folks that, work in security, or in like policing, veterans. We've seen things that in our day to day that we need, to work through. So these conversations are very important. So thank you everyone that's joining and, having these. Remember to abide by the code of conduct. And if if something, just let one of us know and we'll make sure that the space stays safe. But yeah, that's it. Jay.
Yeah. I will say
Um,
just real quick, sorry, this meeting is recorded, so also do keep that in mind.
yeah, we're working on that. So I am a a proud former servant of this nation's people, and doing the stuff that I did left some marks that don't readily get seen. A lot of stuff I can laugh about today. I wasn't laughing while I was in it, but I can laugh about it today because that crazy slash funny. Um, that being said, I've been going to therapy myself, 11 years now. 11 years. Um, I was seeing one therapist so long, she decided that she had enough of me and went on home to the father after retirement. She said, I got to get up out of here. And then she got up out of here. So that was a loss for me. And then I went through another one and now I'm with another one. So I'm four therapists down now. But I keep going, I keep doing the work. All that being said, this subject is near and dear to my heart because I wouldn't be able to do what I do for myself, for people, or in my role professionally, in my multiple professions, if not for going and recognizing the first that I needed it. I'll share my story. I was fresh out the uniform, just got back from signing out of the Army. I retired out, so they make you go through this whole thing, and you have to sign forms, and they give you an award, and they pat you on the back or whatever that is. Anyway, I found myself in a Walmart, buying cold cuts. I was buying cold cuts in the Walmart, and there was this very nice, excuse me, Jesus, very nice lady sitting. No, she was working behind the deli counter. And I'm three people back, and I pick my number, and I'm sitting there. And there's this kid. He couldn't be more than 19 or 20 years old. I watched him pull up. He pulled up in like a Ferrari to the Walmart. And I was like, man, these kids today, man, I was not jealous that he had a Ferrari. I was jealous that he could fit in it. You gotta understand. You understand? Being 6'3", and at that point in time, I was 6'3", 250 pounds and solid. And there's no fitting in a Ferrari, but I always wanted to fit in one. So I was kind of jealous about that. I was like, man, this kid's rolling up in a Ferrari, he can fit in it. I was jealous. Anyway, sitting in line, three people back, getting deli meat. He asked, he was getting deli meat as well, and this lady proceeded to cut his deli meat. But apparently she wasn't doing it fast enough. All I heard him say was, I make $1 million a year. I don't have time to wait on this. That's all I heard him say. And the next thing I remember, security guards were pulling my hands from around his neck. That's when I knew I needed help. Like it was like a light switch, and that. So I tell people about my multiple light switches. I can flick them on and off at will now, which is wonderful. But at that point in time, I could not flick it on and off at will. There was not an on and off at will. It was a straight up clap on. Somebody claps from a distance, the light comes on. I clap on, and this kid clapped, and the light came on. And then that's when I knew I needed help. So I went and I sought help, and I've been going to get that help ever since. That's me sharing, opening up that sharing. So if anybody else feels the need to be that vulnerable, you can be. I'm not scared, and you shouldn't be either. We got you.
Yeah, thanks, Jay, for sharing that. And I think you really touched on sort of my very first question, which is sort of what are some of the ways in which you've felt like you need to get or seek out help, and really what have you done to do that? And it looks like therapy has been just like a really major tool for you there. And I know for me, I started going to see a counselor also close to 4 years ago at this point. I had a very like tragic personal experience that I needed to start processing. That's also when I sort of said, I need to, I cannot resolve this by myself. All of this is to say that from a sort of work perspective, this question had come up for me in the past, and it wasn't immediately clear to me, or I wasn't maybe immediately comfortable saying that I needed to seek out counseling. There was quite a bit of stigma in my family about those kinds of things. So it is what it is. I wish I had sought it out sooner, but at the same time, yeah, at some point, like you were saying, Jay, you sort of just reach that point where you really say no more, and that looks different for different people. But yeah, anyway, that's enough about me. I
Yeah.
have some seed questions, or we can just keep sort of building off of each other's.
Yeah, mine, I'll share mine. I'm a little under a year in therapy, but I went into a TEDx like cohort group with two different ideas that I wanted to speak on, and one of them I realized I couldn't talk on. Still a little like sensitive and raw with it, but so from that, like just not being able to talk about it, I jumped into therapy, and it's been interesting how much I've been able to realize about myself within the last year or so, and go through some of the darkness that's in like my head. So +1 to therapy if nobody has started. Usually I think there's a moment in your life where you're just like, okay, I need help, somebody to figure this out and somebody to realize like what it is and the patterns that you're doing. And it helped me. I had started therapy, started evaluating some of the PTSD I have from domestic violence. Um, yeah, passing it on.
Yeah, I'm just gonna jump in on that because I think I came from a family that, I mean, mental health is just not a consideration whatsoever, period, at all, and it's kind of a generational thing, of course. But when I moved over to the UK, mental health was such a different thing. And it's not as stigmatized as it is in the US, and it's much more accessible. And at this point, on any given year, no matter where I'm at or how I feel, I go and do 6 weeks of what I just call maintenance therapy. I do 6 weeks with whoever they'll sign me up with, doesn't matter who. I don't always know on a given year what I'm going to be talking about. But I will find out in that first session. And I think that's the kind of thing, like sometimes we want to like therapize ourselves before we get in there and know what we're going to talk about. And that's not your job. Your job is just to show up. That's the important part.
I'm curious, has anyone done any of the tools or the mechanisms, the tapping, the EMDR, the screaming into the void, anybody done that? I got stories. I got shock therapy. Has anybody done the shock therapy? Anybody done that shock stuff? Ooh, if you haven't,
I've
boy.
done the screaming. The screaming one is pretty fun. Just don't expect to have a voice the next couple of days, but essentially you have a safe person in front of you and you have to imagine that they're like this one individual, that's causing you internal turmoil and you're so just supposed to like let out all your anger without physically, which for me was kind of a difficult thing. But the screaming one was interesting. The MDR um was very interesting and kind of like hypnotic in some sense because you're kind of like watching, for the folks that know, you're watching like a ball go back and forth and hearing it ping pong. So I would have moments in the day where my eyes just kind of started shifting like that when I first started. It
Mhm.
was really, really interesting.
Yeah, I have so uh when I used to go out, I used to play a song. We'll call it a song. I don't know what you call it. It's far from it's music, I guess, to some, but I won't give the name of it here because this is a recording. But it used to prepare me to do the worst, and it would put me into almost a state of it would put me into it and it would keep me into that state. And whenever I felt um nervous about an action, it I would play that in my head, and then I would let that carry the nerves, and I would act. I would handle business. Anyway, when I got into therapy, part of the therapy was um taking that song, putting the headphones, turn up as loud, and then systematically taking me from a place of violence to a place of being able to hear that song and not associating it. So I kid you not, there were puppies involved. Go laugh about this. You gotta understand it. I think this might be a love story too. Just hold on for. There were puppies involved at one point because you had to take me to from a place of violence to a place where I can hear this because it's something that's played in a few places. Like you'll hear it. I mean, like I hear it. I was in the gym working out and you know you associate it, but this way it got me to associate different. Um, anyway, that story was just to let you know how bad it actually was. Excuse me, how bad I actually was. Not bad, just conditioned. How conditioned I actually was. Um, and I feel like you know this part doesn't often get mentioned. You know, therapy, going to get help is becoming for better or for better. It's becoming increasingly um, mainstream for people to go get help or recognize the need to go get help or something like that. But I think what doesn't often get talked about is the you know it's not, this ain't no joke, it ain't no fad, there's not a fad here, this is not a you know there are some that have been conditioned um for you know for some amazing, incredible, horrible, terrific and tragic things. And I put all those words together on purpose. And you know, it takes a considerable amount of work and effort to climb up out of that. Today, what we have going on, especially in our work communities and you know, society wise and everything else, some of these, depending upon where you come from and how you came from, some of the stuff today could be triggering, man. It could be very triggering. And if for not having that part of my therapeutic journey taking place, I don't know that I'd be able to handle today like I handle it. Right, bringing that around for, there's a reason why I mentioned that, bringing that around full circle. I think today, you know, unfortunately, I still find myself in rooms where I'm by myself in those rooms. It is what it is, right? Um, and then you add to that the element of, you know, the things that you think are going to help you and protect you. Well, first of all, I don't know that those things were really there to protect in the first place. But still, if you choose on a good day to feel like you got some air cover, it was nice to feel like that. Today, there's no air cover. Like you just know, boy, you better, you know, just now that you know, act accordingly. And that could be triggering. That could be very triggering to some. So if it was for not that bit of therapy I went through, that was a good 6 months of that. Um, I don't know that I'd be able to look at things today with the lens that I look at them, or be able to, or for that matter, be able to change lenses and see other perspectives, right? Um, so that's what that number's for. I'm sharing a lot because I feel like during these office hours, when this stuff gets played back, you know, I mean, I don't know what people are going through, so people might be afraid to join and speak because this is a recording and because this is so I'm not scared. I'd say I'll speak my piece. It took a whole lot of violence to get to this kind of peace, and I made peace. So I'm here to share my peace, right? What I have a quote. What gives you peace versus what makes you peaceful. Change the narrative. That's my quote to you. Feel free to use it. So this is what gives me peace, and then what makes me peaceful will be those who can consume this and get what they need to get from it. So that's why I'm sharing so much.
I
See, I
appreciate
told you
that.
I make it a love story. Told you that. I knew there'd be love
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah, you're bringing up a lot of things. I'm going to throw maybe a question in here because you sort of touched on feeling by yourself in a room. I had a question around imposter syndrome, and I think it's a pretty common experience, right? Especially for people in underrepresented groups and communities in tech and cybersecurity. So yeah, I'm going to just put that out there. Have folks here experienced imposter syndrome, and how has that sort of affected your mental health? What have you done to overcome that potentially?
I have. I'm gonna let Crow speak first. I tell you all about my imposter syndrome.
Hi, my name's Crobe, and I've experienced imposter syndrome every day for the last 30 years of my career. Whether you come from an underrepresented group or not, this is something that is incredibly common in this field. And, it's partially, I think, part of the pace of change and the pressure a lot of us, especially in cyber, are put under. We're put into very stressful situations, giving minimal preparation time. And part of the imposter syndrome, which I've never completely bested, but part of it, I feel there's a small bit of it that I feel is helpful, where it drives me to always be asking the question, am I making the right choice? Am I doing the right thing? And it's helped me, it's definitely helped me remember to be humble and to always try to listen more than I talk. Because I feel I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, and somebody else probably smarter is in the meeting with me. But B, it's really helped me learn a lot about borrowing different techniques. I've been a student of Dr. White and how he conducts himself within the community, and I've learned from most everybody here. And but if imposter syndrome is a real thing, it can be crippling, and especially for young folks getting into this career path, which is one of the reasons why I'm such an enthusiastic supporter of this group, where we're trying to reach out and establish connections for people trying to get into this weird field, and to help support them and provide them mentors and experiences and help them understand, just like today, that everybody has grapples with mental health. Sometimes it's on a spectrum of something mild to severe. And we all have stories we can share, and we all can help each other out. So I'll pass it over. I think Yessie was next.
Yeah, so quick little story, but I discovered what like the word imposter syndrome very early in my career. And I just said it quotes because like I remember sitting in a like women in tech event, and somebody was describing this, and like it was such a light bulb moment for me that I yelled out, I'm like, that's what I have, like in the middle of this like meeting. And I was like, um, and I just completely realized like what it was. I was the only female in an engineering security team that just never felt like I fit in or like I wasn't seen. And take it forward to maybe a few years ago, continuing like plus one to what Crobe says, like I have imposter syndrome every day. I sit in a very and I don't, I sit in a very cool spot at my career that even my best friends like, it hasn't hit you where you're at. And I'm like, it hasn't. I still feel that I'm in like college, sitting around with a bunch of colleagues, just, snapping and drag, I won't say a curse word, but it hasn't hit me. And she's like, is it the imposter syndrome? I was like, maybe, but or it could be like the humbleness. But a few years ago, one of my mentors told me that whenever the imposter syndrome hits, it's because you're hitting a new threshold, and it's your old self fighting your new self. So it's your old self kind of like getting more into your ear. You have a devil angel that is like portrayed in cartoons. You have the devil, which would be like your old self. They're like, no, you can't do this and this. And that voice tends to be higher at that moment. But you have the other guy saying, yeah, you can do this. You're already doing it. So it's just an interesting for me once like I realized what it was, and then had that conversation every time I feel imposter syndrome. I'm like, is this my old self like fighting back, or is this my new self like actually telling me there's danger? And I'll pass it on to Sal.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I know I have a unique perspective on imposter syndrome. So I like one, hate the word, but number two, if you think you're feeling that, like pay attention to that because it's probably your body telling you that you are at risk in some way, socially or otherwise. Like I say, don't ignore it. It means that there's something you need to pay attention to. But when I talk to my mentees about this, before I ever teach them tech, I say, all right, there's two things that we're going to do at the beginning of every stand-up. Like one, have you checked your Maslow's today? Did you drink water? Did you sleep? Are you at risk in one of those ways? Check your Maslow's. And then like one of my engineers is always like, yes. I was like, you didn't go drink water. And then we cover the concept of locus of control. And we do this in a really, really clear way. And our stand-ups involve locus of control. So like, what is it that went well for you? What was your like favorite failure of the week? Did something happen to you this week that made you feel out of control? All right, let's actually evaluate. What is it that you have control over? What is it that you do not have immediate control over, but will in the future? What is it that you do not have control over and never will in the future? But I think in a room like this, there's situations like that. So I have a stand up every day that I do for people that want to join in, and it's a closed room. It sits on a server that sits in a place in the UK, and that's where they live. So there's no risk of bleeding that information. And we have those serious conversations. And I jumped in there because I had someone tell me that they had hired me because, quote unquote, women get abstracts submitted easier. And I was like, what? I was like, my entire career, my 15 years of experience, and you hired me for that, and you just say that out loud when I ask you why you hired me, that's your first thought. So I jumped onto that call and I said, this just happened to me. And you know what? All these mentees, most of whom are in their early 20s, they're like, Sal, did you check your Maslow's? Yes. Did you check your locus of control? I said, yes. You know what? Writing abstracts is in my zone of control, and I'm just going to ignore that. But it's something I think about every time.
I spent the better part of actually, so like Crow, I understand when I got into this is how recent, when I got into open source, I used to watch Probe. I'm talking about, I don't care, like if I had to point to someone and say, this is like my Obi-Wan Kenobi of open source, that would be Probe. I would sit there and watch, pay attention to how he conduct meetings, pay attention to how he galvanized the community, go to the summits, pay attention to how he worked the room, how he presented. I'm dead serious. So if you watch me at a conference and you watch me at work a room, you watch me get at a podium, I'm just mimicking. I'm, of course, my way, but I'm straight up mimicking what what Probe does. And anyway, imposter syndrome sits with me a little different because I've had it probably my whole life. I was a very smart kid that came out of one country into another, grew up in the dirt, straight up dirt, and I mean dirt. And my security blanket was an area rug, and I didn't know it was an area rug until I could afford one. Do you understand? That's me. That's me growing up. So I was a smart kid who knew how to do some pretty cool things with devices I didn't understand. Like I was designing programs on Texas Instrument calculators with a Polish kid in school. He couldn't speak English and I couldn't. And we both together was designing programs on little Texas Instrument calculators. Okay, that's like stuff like that. And I kept, and because of where I lived, I was caught between a rock and a hard place. You know, I'm trying to survive over here and I'm trying to survive over there at the same time. And that would continue on even throughout my military career. But the one thing I did to conquer imposter syndrome, not conquer it per se, but when I found myself in a place where I didn't know something or where I was talked to and I didn't understand everything that was going on, everything that was happening, I would go back and I would spend nights. That even shows itself now. Like I will sit up, I would be 24, 48 hours up learning something. I'm talking about the sun would rise and fall, I would forget all about it. Hell, that's how I got my OSCP. I was able to take 24-hour exams. Like I could just take an exam and just sit up 24 hours, just, because in my mind it was learn it, apply it, then test on it and come back with a certificate. That's why I got so many certifications now, so many degrees now. I'm not joking. I wish this was a joke. That's why my marksmanship is what it is. That's why my grappling is what it is. That's why I would go back and I would do everything I possibly can to become an authoritative figure on it, not for the purpose of um um like my favorite poem says, looking too good or talking too wise. No, for the purpose of being able to go into a room, still humble to learn more, but not let everything that's being said to me go over my head. So that I can then learn. I would learn. I'll give you an example. I'm training for a bodybuilding competition now, right? I competed last year. I got my competition season coming up, and my prep doesn't start until towards the end of April. But I'm in the gym 4 hours a day. I'm doing my cardio. I'm eating. People are like, man, you're slimming down. You're looking good. This now I'm like, dude, I'm prepping for the prep. Like, so that's what it was. When I feel like I need to, hell, that even applies to now, I guess. When I feel like I'm behind, when I feel like when I feel imposter syndrome, my reaction is to prepare myself to learn so that I wouldn't be an imposter in the room, but I would still have myself wide open to bring in that information that's being given in that room, right? That's just a mechanism I use. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody because it does involve a lot of rain, sleet, hail, rain, sleet, hail, snow, and blood, sweat, and tears. My 2 cents.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you all for sharing your perspectives. I actually wanted to come back to something you mentioned, Sal, about Maslow's. So can you talk a little bit more about what that is and why they're important?
Yeah, so like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is like, are you getting your basic needs of like food, water, shelter, sleep? And then it goes on to like social needs, psychological needs. And it's not a thing that, I mean, PhD in neuroscience, so I'm always going to go to like your organ that you're using to do this job sits, unfortunately, inside of a body. So you must pay attention to that, or the brain will not function. Um, and there's also like three different types of developers. There's developers that get their work done in the morning, in the afternoon, and at 2 a.m. That's it, right? So like if your Maslows are arranged to like only sending VPRs at 2 a.m., I'm not going to fault you for that. I'm going to say, all right, you probably have a diurnal sleeping pattern, and that's when your creative energy exists. Lean into that. I'm happy with that. It still gets it done on Monday. Like, so like really sitting back and like understanding what it is about your rhythms and the ways that you can feel safe and embodied in your body. Like I do an insane amount of yoga, right? Like that's my practice to bring me into myself. Um, but like checking in on yourself and like giving yourself a mental score. What is your baseline? Where are you at when you go into those? Because a lot of times, like, especially if you're in an underrepresented space, you're going to be dealing with confrontational comments from strangers, really weird stuff, right? And like, it's the thing that people don't realize is like, a lot of people are going through their day to day and never experiencing the additional 10 to 15% of just absolutely bizarreness from people on the internet. And like, so you've got to check your Maslow's way more often, right? So like, as long as you're sitting there like rested, happy, good in your space, then also like on that social level, like, do you actually have a place like this? It's why I showed up to this. This is awesome. I'm so excited. But like, is there a place where you can come to people who have like experience and who can like hold that space for you? Because like one, it's good to have a space like this, but number two, like don't engage in a system that isn't going to change what's wrong about itself. And things like this are awesome. Not that I've ever really had a problem with OpenSSF. I love this space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and then locus of control. I'm just gonna like share some links to locus of control, but locus of control is like it's a like a little bit more of a complex topic, but I think whenever you just think of imposter syndrome, you want to be able to go back, all right, no, let's think locus of control. What, like, where am I? How am I focused? What do I have control over? Um, and then imposter syndrome, I think, is like, if your heckles are up, that's a clear signal. Listen to it. Do not say that, oh, that's something I should not pay attention to. I think 100% of the time you should.
Thank you for, taking a moment to explain those two. I think something that I see kind of coming out of this conversation is that everyone has all step back, right? Sort of taking care of your own mental health takes work, and I think sometimes, and this is something that I learned through my own counseling experience as well, is I have to do 99% of the work, and the counselor typically guides me in different directions and just makes me think about different tools. So it's all about tools in a toolbox is how I tend to think of things. And so specific questions that you ask to yourself, specific methods of sort of finding that inner peace, it's all very different. So I appreciate everyone sort of talking about a bunch of different um, approaches and conversations that have been helpful, because I think it just shows the breadth of um, things that can help, and also just the fact that different approaches work for different people. And so part of it, I think, comes down to finding what works for you, and that can take time and take experimentation and all of that, right? And I think some of that, to sort of bring it back a little bit to sort of tech industry conversations, is also, for example, finding the people that help you feel supported in a meeting room, or as you were saying, Sal, maybe having dedicated groups like this working group, the Bear working group, to just create that space, are just one or some of the few ways that I know work for me as well. But yeah, exactly as you're saying, I commonly, as someone with anxiety, but also just in general, not very comfortable with strangers, precisely because I don't know how they're going to respond to me, and I don't necessarily have control over that. I can always appreciate it when I can join meetings with people that I know or have worked with. So um, that's also something I try to tell my mentees, for example, is if you're worried about not being able to accomplish something, make sure someone that makes you feel safe or comfortable is around, whether that's giving a talk and they're sitting in the audience, or maybe you give a talk with them. Public speaking is a whole separate topic around that I think is somewhat related to this conversation too. But um, the tech industry and probably other like fields also, uh, there there are a lot of expectations of what a sort of successful tech person looks like and does, and that includes things like public speaking. That includes things like writing blog posts and being a star programmer sometimes. And those are the kinds of things that I think can start to make a lot of people feel unwelcome, uncomfortable, and all of that. So yeah, hopefully this conversation can start to break down some of those preconceived notions. Um, let's see, we still have about 20 minutes for conversation. Yeah, are there any other sort of discussion points people want to bring up? Otherwise, I also can sort of throw another maybe question into the mix and see how folks respond. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, thanks everyone for everything of what you've shared. It's, I think, Marcella, to your point about all the different options. It's really helpful. Therapy, counselors. I've been through uh, as many different kinds as I could find. Counseling with my wife. Coaching is another one, specifically around ADHD. I thought that was really helpful to get a perspective that was different. And then groups like this where you can share with each other, but also learn from each other because there's so many things, so many experiences. Our lives are all very unique, but the way as human beings we respond, we react, we like there's a lot of similarities about how we feel and what can happen in those situations. The other thing that's, I think I'm coming to terms with is that the path is never straightforward. You're never going to get better and be better forever. You may have times in your life that are better than others, and things will happen that get worse. And there are different challenges to overcome continually. The tech industry, maybe to like, one of the things that I have been through is IPOs, acquisitions, spin-offs. Um, I've worked at companies with quarterly layoffs. I've worked at companies that have been hiring and growing like crazy. Um, I joined companies where at the beginning they were absolutely the right place for me. They were places I felt psychologically safe. They were helpful and encouraging and just an absolutely wonderful place to work. 6 months later, they have turned into absolute dumpster fires that I needed to escape. And the way that I escaped those was by going back to therapy again and learning and discovering like how much of this is outside of my control and how much I will not be able to change a 30,000 person company and all the things that happened there. Um, so yeah, I think it's kind of a summary. It's like it's okay for it not to be always better, and it's gonna have ups and downs, but that's also what makes the good things feel so much better when you have them to contrast the yin and the yang of things. So yeah, I'll pass it to Sal.
Yeah, I had this like one SRE manager that I worked under, and like SRE, right? You're dealing with like extremely arbitrary stress. It's always like when that pager goes off, oh no, it's suddenly your fault just because you signed up for the job, not because the engineers could have done it better the first time. But um, like the two things that he said to me right away, and like I used these for the rest of my career and then gave up on pager duty because I want a life. Like one, he was like, when that pager goes off, you need to invent a persona that you're going to become that can handle that stress. And then you're going to take off that persona the second you're done. And I was like, oh, I've got that. So, like, you'll be able to tell. And I still have people that I work with long enough that they know me well enough. They're like, Sal, are you being the dude right now? The dude from Big Lebowski? And I'll say, I am. And they'll say, oh no, what went wrong? Because that means something really serious went wrong because I flipped something on my head where I know I need to get through that, right? And so like that persona switching still works for me, even though like you can like visually see it when I flip into it. I didn't know that. But then there's this other thing that he said. He's like, and you need to make your own personal Richter scale for stress. Because the thing about stress is when your stress levels go up, it puts you into a mental state where you may not be able to recognize it for yourself. So like he's like, all right, you're gonna start from 1, go up to 7. Like 1 is like, oh, it's a little bit bad. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 7. 7 is like the worst thing possible that you may not have experienced yet. But then he was like, and you're gonna have 2 columns sitting next to it. One of them are like, can you identify? And this is part of like why we check our baselines and our Maslow's, because then what you need to be able to do is go in and identify, is there a physiological aspect to each of those levels that I can identify? Is there a social aspect? Like, is there a way that it impacts my relationships with the people around me that I can identify at each of these forms of stress? And 3, what is the like personal agreement that I've made with myself to do to take action at each of those levels, right? So 1 is like, I go do yoga. 2 is like, I skip that meeting or I find someone to cover it. when you get up to those higher levels, like I have a contract agreement with myself that if anything gets above a 5, I quit that job. The end, right? Because what's more important to me, having the longevity and not breaking down my body over a psychological event I don't have control over. I'm pretty good at my job. I'll just go somewhere where it works out well, right? But I would not be able to have that control or that feeling of autonomy if I was allowing stress to dictate. And that Richter scale, I rewrite it every year or two because I've realized that like I can handle more stress with age. So it's changed. But like having that external thing is so useful to me. And I would be so curious if y'all went and made your own Richter scales. You don't have to share the details of it, but like it's a cool practice.
Vic, you're up.
Hello, can y'all hear me? Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing, everyone. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to share, I guess, some stuff from my perspective too, in terms of things that have been helpful with stress. I personally have I started open source in like 2015, and I experienced like a big burnout in tech, where I took like almost 2 years off because like my body physically broke down and I had a psychotic break. And this was after experiencing therapy and taking medication. After that, I had issues finding another therapist because I faced temporary houselessness. And the medications that I had before were no longer able to be prescribed to me because of the psychosis that I experienced. So it became a situation where I was like feeling kind of helpless and hopeless because I started to try to do online therapies and like these platforms are new. The therapist would literally cycle out and I'd have to like restart. And it kind of just made me like turned off to therapy at the time, but it was very helpful when I first experienced it. So I think it is a great like baseline for people. But something that also helped me was I like invested in myself outside of, I guess, like tech or the corporate or work sphere. I went more into like art, my own spirituality, and I did yoga teacher training as well because it was something I was feeling really aligned with. So I know yoga was mentioned as something that is beneficial. I like totally second that, but I also want to like add in addition to that, a lot of people see yoga as something that's very like physical and athletic because of how it's practiced in the West. But there are different types of yoga that can be extremely beneficial if we're experiencing stress and we need to get out of like the go, go, go active mindset. So yogas that I really like to highlight are like yoga nidra, which is really good for sleep. Yin yoga, which is a lot slower paced and like restorative. There's something called restorative yoga too, or sometimes it's called like chill yoga. And then in addition to that, sound baths. I've practiced sound baths and I've attended many. And both in these yoga sessions and in sound baths, I've been able to have like an emotional release where my body feels safe and I actually like let out tears and I'm like, oh, I just needed like a space outside of the normal like routine to like let go and relax. And in those spaces, start to make like community connections with people who maybe have experienced similar but are in a different life path. Another practice that I've been going to more to is acupuncture, where I go specifically for some chronic pain that I experience that I do believe is psychosomatic just because of like ongoing health stuff that I've been trying to manage, but also like for anxiety. And I can literally feel myself like start to have these releases in my body. And even just connecting with my acupuncturist, where he'll be like, let's talk about your diet or your water intake or like other things that affect us that maybe we don't really think about. And it's just like another opportunity for connection and community where we're physically located. Because being at the computer and like virtual connections are so important, but also it's just like, what's the community we have surrounding us who can support us or understand us or like maybe provide other resources. So I think those are other things that I just like to share. And alternatives to therapy too, which I have friends that provide. And I've even provided to as somebody who's a spiritualist that does like dream interpretation and tarot is just like peer communication and like exchange that might be at a either lower rate or like a pay what you can rate. If it's kind of hard to find like therapist or people, sometimes just talking to somebody that has a lived experience that won't judge you is just as beneficial. So yeah, I wanted to share those and thank you for providing the space.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. It gave me a few ideas. I know one of the questions are like different tools, so we can also just migrate to that for the last is like different tools for folks to use. Piggybacking off of the yoga, I'll take it a level higher and just I think connecting with your body in different forms is great. So dancing, yoga, anything that allows you to let outlets. But for me, martial arts was a big one for, I've been training for over 6 years. And I've always used it as a form of therapy, as a way to like check in myself and see how my body is responding, what where am I lacking, where am I, being stuck in. So getting into martial arts or just some kind of body movement flow, I think is also a great one because sometimes we just have all this like energy stuck, especially since we've been sitting all day. And usually when my bestie calls and she's just, either of us is in one of our uh, deep rabbit holes of darkness, the first question, and it goes back to like Sal's questions on like physical needs. I usually ask her, have you seen the sun today? Did you do a workout today? If you worked out, did you sweat or did you just do like usually pushing our bodies into that like sweating, challenging ourselves helps us with that. Journaling are also different techniques that I've used. This past year it was you need multiple because like for this past year I couldn't do jujitsu. I would just have weird body response when people would physically touch me. When my PTSD hit and I started MDR for therapy, I had to find other outlets. So dancing and yoga are great other forms of movement, journaling, artistic. It's interesting because if you see most of the artists, usually when they're in dark times, they make the most beautiful pieces of art. So take that creativity, get a paintbrush on your hand, and just let it flow. I know when I was in mine, I created this little brick. It's a little canvas. It's like a stained glass kind of view, and I just no idea. I just free formed. It's actually one of my favorite paintings that I've created. So those are just different tools that you can use in case therapy isn't accessible financially or just in your region. Finding a friend, as well as like Vic said. Um, yeah. If anybody else has any tools that they want to share.
Wait, I do. I have a tool because tarot cards came up. I use these for work all the time. It is the Star Trek tarot deck. And like I will not use like real tarot cards to ask questions about my career or to like have other people pull cards, but I take these to conferences all the time and I say, do you want to pull a deck for like your career? And it's like way more aggressive than normal tarot cards are in its advice and its tone of voice. But like, yeah, like it's one of these like magic, it's kind of, yeah, exactly, right? But like using these things because it's like as an alternative, as a way to like get yourself like started and go, oh, that's so damn cool. Yeah. But like I found them so useful and I'm always so surprised like how much people open up with these stupid tarot cards at conferences about their jobs because I don't think they've ever had a chance to like it's an open canvas. You perceive it however you want to. Invaluable. These little deck of cards.
I love tarot cards. Yeah, that's the other thing. Is like whenever I have a question, I have different tarot cards for different question like areas of life. I'll pull a tarot card, and it's cool because the first one that I pulled from Marvel, for anybody that knows me, was Deadpool, and I was like, this is all I needed.
Yeah, I can jump in for sure. On the one hand, the physical, right? Like there are different outlets, I guess is what I'm hearing from people. There's the physical outlet, the sort of creative outlet, the spiritual outlet too, right? To some extent, where maybe we just need to like focus inward, but also sort of immerse ourselves kind of I like to go hiking and gardening a lot, and I almost never use headphones because I just want to be touching the dirt and sort of immersed in my environment. But then I also do martial arts sometimes, or I go for a run, and it's less to it's less to sort of get very good at that particular sport. For me personally, that's just something that I don't that that I don't enjoy, to be honest. It's really just about getting the body moving, and my mind focuses completely on the task right in front of me rather than um, yeah, sort of worrying about things. So I think maybe that's ultimately part of what it is also, is that, you know, completely disconnecting from the stressors, the work, the sort of grind culture that we really do have in tech, especially. Um, just anything that helps me do that, I find pretty useful. I am not a visual artist, but I really enjoy creative writing. So that's sort of yet another way that I personally sort of express myself and sort of issues that I have whenever I need to work through something. Anyway, John.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's most impactful for me is personal connection, and that's with my family. So I've got 3 kids and my wife. They've been out of town the last couple of days for spring break, and I ate 2 meals. I realized that today when I started getting much more hungry, and having them around to motivate me to be better, but also to have them understand how best to support me. How can I have the right relationship with my wife for her to be able to say, "Did you take your medicine today?" And me not have an angry emotional reaction to that, or being able to come to me and say, "You need to eat some food," or "You need to just get up and walk away from the computer." My dogs also do that. I consider that a personal connection. They need to go outside. Like, that forces me to, my German Shepherd will come and jump on my lap if she needs to go out. And that's a very good interruption and distraction. So there's a lot of different ways to have that personal connection. So I would strongly advocate for that.
Yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. I think as people start to head off, I do want to be respectful of people's sort of time and schedules. But hopefully this has been a helpful conversation for everyone here. I've certainly learned a lot from what's been shared, and hopefully, yeah, this can. I think Jay, you're the one who said that hopefully this can be peaceful for somebody else as well. Yeah, it's an ongoing conversation. I think the conversation keeps shifting towards more openness and more support structures, at least in some ways. And so I hope that we can sort of continue this on. Anybody else want to say a final word?
Just thank you everyone that shared today. Thank you for, opening up the space and having these conversations. We're, as far as the bear group goes, we're trying to figure out, next topics. So if there's something in here that we were talking about that you want to discuss more in our next one, or any other ones, just feel free to message us on Slack and let us know. And with that, if nobody has anything else, thanks everyone and enjoy your day. Jay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.